Okay, we're now live on YouTube. There you go. That was quick, and I actually got to see it this time and notice. So tonight, thank you anyone that's tuned in, either live or after the fact, or on any of the various podcast services. Tonight we've got Professor Alan Baker here for us, and he is the owner of Atlanta Martial Arts, AMAC Tactical Group. He's also a director for CSW and works with that association a lot, and as well as now helping out on the directorship with the Pedro Sauer Association. And I believe sort of a Francis Fong disciple and Ajahn Chai as well for the Thai boxing.
Yes, sir.
Oh, there we go. Got that right. And also well-known coffee lover, which is the most important thing, right?
Here's to you.
Awesome.
That was the bit that I was most excited about. Somebody that seems more excited about coffee than even me, and posts even more regularly. all of my best coffee memes come from Alan. So yeah, thank you for that.
Oh yeah, my pleasure. Constantly looking for good ones.
Nice. He also has the very, and we mentioned it on other podcasts, has the very dubious title of being the person that's responsible for myself and Robin, probably, yeah, sort of indirectly being involved with the Pedro Sauer Association and doing jiu-jitsu. So it's your fault.
Sorry.
Yeah. I don't know if you remember the connection. It's a bit of a secondary connection, but there's a gentleman who we used to train at his academy called Lawrence Sandham, who came to the train with the Masters.
Yes. Yep. Fong Academy.
Yeah, he asked you about jiu-jitsu and you recommended Master Sauer. So it was us that was kind of pushing Lawrence at the time to get, Gracie Jiu-Jitsu over in the UK. And yeah, he then went off and came back sort of a week later and went, I found the guy. I found who we get involved with. So yeah. So ultimately, yeah, thank you very much.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Thanks for being a part of the team.
So I don't know where we start. Let's start with the jiu-jitsu stuff. So can you give everyone a little bit of background, sort of how you got into Gracie Jiu-Jitsu and meeting Master Sauer and becoming part of that whole thing?
Well, I guess it originally started when I was going to an instructor camp with Guru Anasano. And at his instructor camps, he would have John Jacques Machado come in the mornings, and he would teach sessions every morning for each day of the camp. And so I believe that was my first introduction to it. And after that, secondly, back when Eric Paulson used to travel with Guru, and it's like, Joel travels with him now. Eric used to do that, I think early 90s. And he was coming through the Fong Academy, and I met Eric. And you got to love Eric, man. He's great. And just fell in love with how he taught. It's like drinking from a fire hose, and just so much information in such a short amount of time. So I was immediately like, I've got to go see this guy. And I think within 4 months, I flew out to California. Spoken to the guy a few times, and hey, I'd like to meet. I want to train. I want to do this stuff that you're teaching. And I remember him sending me some crazy directions, going out in the middle of nowhere. And, it ended up being in a small space in the back of a warehouse. And I remember walking through the warehouse thinking, well, this is different. I mean, get back in there, and there's some old mats, and there was like maybe 6 or 7 guys and Coach Eric. And I just got my ass kicked. And after that, started asking questions. What is it? How did you put it together? And that's when, he started talking about his influence or part of the influence with the jiu-jitsu and the Gracies. And that when I started looking, and Master Pedro had a affiliate in Atlanta at that time. So we got connected with him. And after that, it was history. I was the type of personality, still the type of personality that I don't mind traveling to go find good information. Like Coach Eric, Sifu Fong, once you get introduced to them, it's like, okay, I'm going to go see these guys 3-4 times a year. And that's what we did with Master Pedro. We used to go out to Utah when he was there, probably 3-4 times a year. And the rest is history all the way to this day. I think one of the major influences or of time with him was when we started the school here in Woodstock, Georgia. It's about maybe 18 years ago. And he was just starting to do seminars, and we had him twice a year, I think, for almost 13 or 14 years. And, the prices start to go up a little bit because, he's getting more popular in the US. So then it kind of dropped down to one, and then we were hosting association camps for a little while, but that was an awesome period. I'd have him in Atlanta a couple of times. Then I would go visit him, Utah, or when he was in Virginia. So that was, I'd probably see him 4 or 5 times a year during that period.
Nice. Now he's kind of, as I understand, my geography is not great, but he's not too far away from you now, is he?
Yeah, Savannah, about a 4-hour drive now. So I'm giving him some time to get settled, and then probably start knocking on the door for a visit.
Does he have a big garage that you can maybe like live in and stay there and get all the information?
Yeah, well, there's a school down there, and I'm good friends with the gentleman down there who has the school. So I'm assuming, we could work something out, rent a little time on the mat. And everybody I've talked to here in Atlanta, there's several black belts, and I'm like, I'm going to start doing this pretty soon. Like, oh, I want to go. And then even like Ted, who's in Sarasota, he was like, well, you let me know, I'll drive up. So it sounds like it's going to turn into a group of black belts showing up one day. And I told them we'll just have to buy privates for like 4 or 5 hours and just keep them on the mat for half a day and try to get as much water out of that sponge as possible.
Yeah, there's always something new in there. Every time you see him, there's always something you haven't seen before, and a little tweak on something.
Yeah, he's a creator of jiu-jitsu. That's one of the things that make him very unique is you can ask him a question and he'll say, come do it to me. And then, you'll watch him right there, formulate it in his mind, and then give you 4 answers just from interacting with another body. You don't see that too often in too many instructors. Most of them repeat what they've learned in the past, which is okay. That's great. The same attribute I see with Coach Eric Paulson. He's very creative. He'll do the same thing. It's a little more painful when he does it, but you ask him a question and he'll go, well, come do it to me. And, he'll tie you in 4 or 5 knots and get up and go, there's your answer.
Have you always been at the site that you're at now? Have you always had that academy, or have you kind of built or changed or moved around?
We've been in this one in this area for probably the last 18 years. Prior to that, I first started teaching professionally in the early 90s in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And I think we were probably 6 years there, late 80s, early 90s. And then we ended up having 2 schools there, and it's a partnership. And, sometimes partnerships are a challenge. So when it got challenging, I pretty much just said to the partner I was working with, look, it's yours. I'm going to go to Atlanta and get close to this guy named Francis Fong. And at the time it was either Atlanta or Los Angeles. And I ended up choosing, obviously, Atlanta. And because I knew Guru, came to the Francis Fong Academy a couple times a year. It was the closest hub I could find for the different mentors I wanted to be involved with. So I ended up coming down here. Had to work a real job for a little while. God, just take a pause there for, and then finally got the school. It's been, thankfully, doing okay ever since.
So,
What was the real job? I was going to say, Alan,
sorry,
what was the real job that you did for that short time?
Well, I had a buddy who came to Atlanta, and he did heat and air. So, and he did work as a building engineer. So he pretty much lied to the people he was working with and said, this guy can do this job. And, it's one of those fake it until you make it moments. So I went in and, I was buying books. I was following him around, learning as much as I could, trying to keep up with it. So heat and air and building engineer work for a couple of years there, till I saved up enough money, to have a decent down payment on the academy that we have now.
And I mean, you obviously had the taste of being a martial arts, academy owner and instructor previously, so you knew that you wanted to get back to that. That was always the ambition, to get back to that.
Oh yeah, I knew it when I was a kid. And I grew up in a small town, and when I finally got to the point where I could get a job and make money, I was a member of every school in that town. And I was always the kid that would show up 4 hours early and just hang out and watch. If you're doing a private, I'd be the dummy. I just loved the environment. I thought hanging around the martial arts school all day was the greatest thing in the world. And I had one teacher in my teens. He owned a Kung Fu studio, and he also owned an expeditions company. So that was twice as much fun. We would work for him, or well, I wouldn't say work. I would do stuff for free to help him with the expeditions company during the day, and at night it'd be Kung Fu. So I just loved it. I was like, this is, whether I make money or not, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life.
Yeah, it's not bad. It's not a bad way of doing it.
Yeah, I can't complain. So far, it's been good to me.
That was the Kung Fu that came first, was it? Like, what was your kind of like order of where you found different stuff and got into different arts?
Well, originally, it's just before my 11th birthday, I got into Ishinuru karate. And I was always a rowdy kid, to say the least, high energy. And mom probably had a hard time keeping me under control. So she said, I'm going to take him to this local martial artist and have this guy teaching some discipline, man. And I remember the guy's name to this day, Brent Helms, and he had 2 sons. And I remember the first day, I was like, I'll get out there and fight, because they were sparring. I go, I'll do it. And I remember those 2 kids just beat me to death, man. But I loved it. And so that was my first introduction. After that, I went on to Tung Sudo, Taekwondo, which is a pretty common path. And we got introduced to Burmese Bondo. It was one of the unique things that was in Cleveland at the time, was a Burmese Bondo school, and which is very similar to Thai boxing. That was a great experience. And from there, Chattanooga was about a 30-minute drive from Cleveland. There was a Kung Fu school there. So I started venturing outside of Cleveland and said, I'm going to go learn this Kung Fu. And at the same time, I had a friend who lived about 4 hours north in Tennessee. He moved into Cleveland, and he was doing another Kung Fu system. And every Thursday, he would drive up to this teacher to train and then come back. And he's like, look, go with me. And so I was going to Cleveland or to Chattanooga in one direction, and driving up to Blountville, Tennessee in the other direction. you know, doing the best I could to learn and just be involved with it. So that was how things started.
Nice. So what was then the cross at like? So then did you meet Master Sauer before you met Sifu Francis Fong, or was it kind of, how did that kind of play out?
Yeah, I met Sifu Fong first. I probably got down to the Fong Academy around 94, 95. And like I said, Eric, I met him at the Fong Academy. And that's also was my introduction to Guru Dan and the opportunity to start entering into the instructor program with him. And that was, so I knew those guys first and kind of got introduced to Professor a little later.
I don't know if Robin knows, Robin's trained with Sifu Fong quite a bit, like a reasonable amount, haven't you? Whenever he's been
every time he's been in the UK.
Yeah, and I've
time.
Awesome.
He's just infectious, right?
Yeah, he's you know, has a very unique approach to Wing Chun. I had seen a lot of it prior to meeting him. You know, it's very formal, very traditional. But when I met him, I remember going to his academy, and at that time, someone who was there challenged him a little bit. And I remember him walking him across the room, Chisao, and pinning him against a wall. And, you know, I was like, okay, this is cool. I want to see what this guy's doing. And, you know, he also, due to his influence from Guru Dan and Master Chai, he could blend the other systems. He had a way of connecting what he did with the Filipino Kali, with the Jeet Kune Do and the Thai boxing, and seamlessly putting it together and making it work, which is very unique. And that's, you know, originally what drew me to him and made me decide to move down to Atlanta.
Yeah, I mean, I profess I know nothing about Kung Fu, but I still, when Sifu Fong was there, I still went and did his class.
That was the first session, wasn't it? The first session he did in the UK. So that was like 2011, I think.
Yeah. It was the first time I'd ever done anything to do with Kung Fu. And I just, obviously I'd done the Thai boxing and were we doing Jiu-Jitsu by then?
No, it was, that was pre-Jiu-Jitsu. Well, no, we were probably doing a little bit of it actually.
Yeah. And then Judo and stuff like that. But yeah, I just remember being just astounded about how relaxed, but how, you know, just incredibly fast he was. And just how, yeah, his teaching, how kind of dynamic and enthusiastic he was. And like Ron was saying, infectious. And then when we met Master Sauer, I remember thinking there's similarities here. Like there's, you know, the infectiousness of the personalities was like kind of, it was very similar.
Yeah. I remember when Professor met Sifu Fong too, they had him in for a seminar. I think it was actually one of the conferences where Guru was there and Master Chai. And I remember Professor, you know, he taught jujitsu and then he participated in all the other things. It was just awesome watching him try to do Chi Sao and out there with doing Kali with Guru. It's something watching those guys get together. He learned the basics of Chi Sao. And then the next day he was in early on the mat in someone's guard, trying to make it work against their feet. It's just amazing.
How do you find the crossover from those arts to, I mean, you talk about there about Marcel kind of taking it and thinking, oh, I'm going to try this against someone's legs or whatever. How do you find the crossover? Do you find you get much from all the arts?
Tremendous amount of crossover. For me, I think of it a little differently than, you know, each art. I got a philosophy I follow. It's called system as a source, and it kind of keeps you from being overly attached to a methodology or system-based idea. And the way I look at it is like as a baseline, you have primal environments that you operate in, when you're in a combative situation between another human being. Projectile weaponry, edged, blunt weaponry, striking, pummeling, grappling, or counter grappling, ground fighting, that type of thing. And so I use that framework, and I take a lot of ideas and training methods from the different systems and plug it into that framework. And we do a lot of laboratory work with the guys at the school, just to see if it works, and let's throw a knife in, let's throw a gun into it. And it's surprising, what you see and what actually works, and very educational. But for me, that's the approach I take, borrowing information from different systems and seeing how they fit in to those primal environments or thought patterns.
How do you kind of get that? Because we've talked a few times on this podcast, it's come up loads about teaching people not just moves, but teaching them kind of the concepts behind them and that kind of stuff, so that they start to build a bit like you were saying with Marcel, like that problem solving rather than just following a move kind of thing. How do you get that across, especially when you're dealing with it across lots of arts? Do you find that actually helps because it gives you more tools to demonstrate with, or how do you kind of get that across to you guys?
The way I teach it at the school is like pretty much everybody starts with a technique point of view. What is the technique that will work in this scenario? And you become a technique collector. The next stage I try to get the guys to get into is an understanding of mechanics, timing, placement, and alignment, regardless of what you're doing. Whether you're striking, pummeling, you're doing a takedown or a counter takedown, all the way down to grappling. Obviously, grappling is a tremendous study of the human machine. So they start to study how to cheat and win with alignment of bone structure, placement of the body, proper timing. And then I think the study of the human machine starts to elevate their thought past a technique level to an understanding of how this works. Once you start to see it work, and we're not necessarily programmed for efficiency as human beings. So the martial arts in the various forms is a way to start taking the step on that path to understand a better efficiency, alignment, timing, so that as we go through the journey, you start to get a little older, you still have some things that'll work for you. And, you're dealing with guys that might be in their 20s and you can't keep up like you used to. So you have to have methodology and training to make up for the difference. Then usually it's the way I explain it is once you start to understand those mechanics, they're like musical notes. And then you have to start to play music. So if you're thinking, I'm going to do this technique, you're still kind of stuck in the beginning. And if you train and, consistently over time, it'll start to be ingrained in your nervous system. And, you can teach your body how to start doing those things automatically. And I think past that is a thought pattern. It's like I tell the guys, you watch Coach Eric or Master Sauer, what makes them so unique is how they think. They're not really thinking on a technical level. Because you say, hey, how do I escape side? They go, oh, here's this technique. They'll go, show me your problem, do it to me. And then right there on the spot, they'll create mechanics. They have a thought pattern that they go through. And that's what makes them unique. And as students of the arts, our goal is we strive to achieve that ability to think on those levels. It's like learning triangle. In the beginning, you're at the point and it gets big. You've got so much stuff to keep up with. But simplicity is mastery. So as you start to think differently and gather wisdom, from placing yourselves in those challenging environments, I think that it starts to come back and it gets simple again, not so much system based, but based on the human machine. We're all built pretty similar. And it comes down to how we express this machine in a combative environment. And many other environments, it's as well as fitness outside of the school. What's your diet? There's so many areas of study in a warrior-based mindset that you'll never make it. That's what's so cool about it. And we're never going to get there.
That's what's good about it, right?
Yeah. I've always kind of been, I always stay away from the word master or mastery. I tell my guys, you be on the master path. I want to walk it, but I'll never arrive, and I don't want the mindset of I have arrived, because to me, that's when you relax. I'm here.
It's also quite terminal as well. If you say you're there, then what else is there to do?
I agree.
Yeah. So
you look at like
kind of aiming for perfection. What was it? I can't remember who said it. I think I've heard Greg Nelson say it, but it might not have been him to start off with. But it was something like, strive for perfection, but catch excellence.
Nice. It sounds like Greg.
I'm thinking that. But yeah, it's that kind of, if you aim in that direction, then you aim high. You're going to reach, maybe not all the way to the top because there isn't one, but you're going to reach a higher level.
I agree. And I think the philosophy in general, regardless of what you're doing, we do martial arts, but it's a warrior-based philosophy. We know we'll never get there, but we still get up every day and walk. We still get on the path and we still chase it. But that's what makes you a warrior. So one of the things.
A student walks through your doors, a brand new student, and they come to you and they say, I want to learn martial arts. But they've not done an awful lot of research. Where do you begin with your catalogue of what's on offer? I mean, how do you even begin that conversation? And coming to the jiu-jitsu in that, what would be your first kind of like move or technique that you would show them to kind of, show them the Kool-Aid, so to speak?
I go to the janitorial closet and I get the mop and I go, come with me. We're going to go clean the mat. This would be the beginning and end of your career. Wow. A lot of times I'll just kind of try to find out what they're interested in. Some guys come in and they want to punch things. So, okay, we might start with Thai boxing or the Jeet Kune Do. Some guys, they'll say, oh, I've seen this crazy jiu-jitsu. That looks really cool. I used to wrestle in high school. Okay, cool. Perfect. You're going to start over here. So I kind of have a conversation with them and see mentally what they're comfortable with. Most of the time before they come in, they've got a vision that they see. And if I can find that out and introduce them to it a little bit, and that gets them on the mat, so they're having fun. And then as we move along, we start to discuss all the other areas of combat. And, you realize that you might not have an answer for pummeling, or you might not be a good striker, or maybe a knife gets thrown into the mix and you're like, well, what do I do with this? I've got pieces of yoga bricks that I've cut up into different shapes and I'll dump them out on the mat, and like a lot of times the new guy won't know what's going on, but the guys that are in class, they recognize it. They'll grab one of them and stick it in your ear. And it's like, what is that? Well, it's a knife today. And so that might be their introduction to, maybe I need to take a look at dealing with that. So they gradually get introduced to the philosophy here at the school, which is, very much like Jeet Kune Do, is be aware of the full spectrum of violence or combat, and realize, I know I need to study some things, and even if I don't, I'm aware of it. So like if I am confronted with that and I know, well, I've not done that, I'm going to run. That might be your best answer.
Know your weaknesses.
Yeah, I agree.
Exactly what Alan's saying, Bill. This is pretty much how I started out when I started training with Lawrence. Like up until that point, I'd done a bit of kickboxing, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, wherever I kind of was. And then someone actually sent me to Lawrence's. He had Rick Fay in for a seminar, just like only time he's ever been there. That was my first experience to JKD and sort of Carly stuff. And I was hooked. But then, as you say, everything else kind of, got sucked in. Oh, there's a kickboxing class. I've done a bit of that. I'll do some more. I'll do some more of that. Oh, I'll do the Thai boxing as well now. And then Sambo, Judo, eventually the Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, the Wing Chun with Sifu Fong. It's just, it just everything sort of slots into place given time.
It's great. Rick's awesome.
Unfortunately, I've not managed to train with him again since, but it was a long time ago now. What year was that? That was 2002.
You were saying, Alan, about, you learn the notes and then eventually you learn how to play music. And you were saying about, when you're training, obviously the more practice that you put in, the greater your ability to end up actually making a song. Do you think that do you ask your students to kind of like, tone down their intensity level so that they actually have the chance to be able to recognize the notes that they're playing? Because
the same
sometimes when they're, when they're going like full at it, or full bore, which they can't help it sometimes. I don't know that they get the opportunity to appreciate even the instrument they're playing, let alone the notes.
That's true. And it's probably one of the hidden philosophies. I don't ever necessarily have it written in a curriculum, but we talk a lot about how to train intelligently. And you have to turn resistance or chaos up slowly. Yeah. We in our minds, in our ego, sometimes we like to think, yeah, I can take all of it, give it to me. But I tell the guys sometimes, it's like you will ingrain reaction into your nervous system that you can't get out if you don't do it intelligently in the beginning. So an example is like, say you're doing a jab cross with a new student, and sometimes you'll go to throw and they'll flinch just out of fear, and I'll tell my guys, if you see that, then you really need to slow down, because sometimes that will get in their nervous system, and, they'll always have it. And different personalities deal with it in different ways, but we all have it to some level. We can't just dive into full on chaos and perform well. And I think that's part of the educational formula in combative arts, is realizing that I've got to have a volume knob on it. First I've got to get the information. I learn the notes. I start to learn what order they're going to go in. And one, just on my own, be able to harness the ability to use my body. And then I might start doing it with a partner. And, I have to build and understand the reactions or techniques that I need to ingrain. And if I'm doing it against too much force, I put them in the wrong order, I use them incorrectly, and my body learns them wrong. So I have to tell my partner, look, back off a little bit, and then let me do it right. And the thing is, in my opinion, from what I've seen over the years, is you'll progress quicker doing it that way than just say harder and faster is better. The guys that take their time and build that stuff slowly, within 2 or 3 years are out on the mat, just, surviving and owning those guys effortlessly, which sometimes you have to point out to some of the new guys, hey, look how relaxed that guy is, and let's go ask him why he got that way.
How did you get there?
Yeah.
I think you made a good point there, Alan, because it's exactly what Dave Porter, who we had on last week, said, you know, like people say that practice makes perfect, but practice doesn't make perfect. Practice makes habits.
Correct.
You know, and if it's bad practice, it's bad habits.
Agreed. Good routine done consistently over time will build habits. And, you know, part of what you know, one is just learning the technique, but as a warrior-based artist, we have to organize our time and intelligently build an educational process to follow. Because if you just go to class and they go, here's a new technique, good luck. You know, you just figure it out, you know, but if you got a good teacher, he'll say, look, consistency over time. How many times a week are you going to come in? Well, my wife will let me come twice. I go, well, will she let you come earlier, stay later? And here's how you intelligently take the extra 2 hours and train. These are the drills you're going to do, and these are the processes you want to ingrain in your body. Do you understand? And this is what it'll look like when you're done. Should take you about 6 months to a year. And go to work. You know, there's no way to get around consistent work.
You got to put it
Might as well just do it. Just admit it and go, I'm going to jump in with these other. That's what's the great thing about having such a good environment or team environment. If you've got an academy full of guys, much like yourselves, that understand that, and they're like looking for those good partners. And that don't want to kill you, but they want to, they'll turn it on at maybe 25%, but you can train for 2 hours. Those guys, man, they get incredibly good in, you know, in a short amount of time. So
that makes sense. How do you, like on that kind of path as well, how do you work with the students? Because I'll admit this, I've had this before when I've, you know, not even early on, because I think early on you don't quite know enough to be sort of starstruck or sort of your head blown by what's going on. But when you get someone, maybe blue belt's a really good example from jiu-jitsu, obviously, where they kind of suddenly realize that they don't know anything. Where you suddenly get that, I thought I knew what was going on, and now I was unconsciously incompetent before. Now I'm consciously incompetent. And how do you kind of break it down so that they don't suddenly feel like, whoa, I'm never going to be able to get, you know, like you said, it's a journey, but I'm never even going to get halfway there. What's kind of your
by the way, I hit that frame of mind about every 2 months. Hey, I'm doing good. Damn, I don't know anything.
Good. I'm glad it's not just me.
It's a perennial problem.
Yeah.
Might as well just admit I don't know anything and move forward as a happy camper. You know what? It's I'll tell them that it is part of the process. You know, like we said earlier, you never really arrive. You know, and you're always striving to move forward. And part of that is, you know, sometimes you think you know something, and then a couple of months later you go, I don't know anything. And the time wasted thinking I know is the worst part, because once you have that epiphany, that moment where, well, I don't know anything, and as you struggle to find stuff to know something, that can be some of your most well-spent time as far as educating yourself. So I'll tell the guys, you know, recognize what puts you in that mental framework of I know, and avoid it. You always talk about Coach Greg Nelson. He is so good at that. I mean, I have had him at the school, and I get to go to the conferences with Eric and watch him teach, and him and Eric both. It does not matter who's teaching. They are right there in the front row, asking questions, head tilted, leaning in, absorbing that information, you know, and that to me is a huge example. Those guys, if those guys are doing it, you know, you kind of look back here and go, I've got to get that attitude, and I've got to maintain it. I got to keep myself in check. You know, if I'm having a moment of I think I know, I'm going to stop and go, I better not know. So that's the same thing I tell my guys, and it builds the mindset of continual growth, which comes back to, the overall warrior philosophy. I mean, that's what makes a martial artist, makes a warrior is, they're constantly preparing or for the unknown. A lot of people want to avoid it. They're not comfortable in the unknown, but the warrior seeks it and on a regular basis. That's where he strives to shine.
I think what that with all the things that we've kind of done between and stuff, that's what I quite like about the jiu-jitsu is just the fact that you can't hide from it. Someone is going to show you what you know or what you don't know. There's no lying and pretending. Whereas, unfortunately, with other things, sometimes people, like you said before, can become technique collectors, but not actually ever sort of like digest that and and have the move. They've read the book, but they didn't understand the book.
Well, it gets down to it. I think it's a study of the simple basics. I mean, the simple movement and mechanics of the body. In jiu-jitsu, just the placement of the shoulder 2 or 3 inches left or right when you're underneath somebody that's got 150 pounds, 200 pounds on you, huge difference between making it and then just getting smashed. Timing is a huge study. It's like I look at a lot of systems as being designed behind time, and that's okay. They're perfect for that. But then some systems are ahead of time. They want to avoid getting into a situation where I am behind the curve. I think it's important to have both in all environments. We're discussing grappling, and if I'm ahead of time grappling, I may not get pinned. I tell my guys after a certain point, they have to earn flat. Your body won't be touching the mat. You have space, you have movement, but if he's that good, he'll take it from you. But I want to be ahead of time and not end up in that situation. We're very street based here at the school. So, have to take into consideration, I've got a knife or something like that. And if I'm in close proximity and I'm grappling, it's very difficult to deal with that in a good way. But if I can stay ahead of time, I can keep those things out of reach and be free to move, escape, change my options.
You've got a lot more luxuries that way around, eh? You can.
I agree.
Yeah. You make your own choices in a way, I suppose.
This is sort of our perennial discussion every time we do any of the knife work or the defenses when we're doing, in class and things like that. And how do you feel the Gracie Jiu-Jitsu syllabus and the knife defenses and things like that in there compared to your Kali knife defenses and things like that? Because I know Rob and I always have this discussion and kind of talking about, if you've done quite a bit of Kali, then they seem a little bit more, what's the right word? Effective if you know them really, really well. And maybe the Gracie Jiu-Jitsu ones are a little more simplistic, maybe designed for the person that isn't going to take a real deep delve into weapons, but maybe needs something to give them something to protect themselves in that situation. I think that's the most diplomatic way of saying it.
Okay.
How do you kind of stand on it? Where's your without getting you in trouble?
Well, like for grappling, we learn an Americana from side. You come to class and I go, hey, look, this is what it looks like. Here's how you do it. Now you know it. You're good to go. So go grapple with the brown belt over here. And I want you to go put that technique on that brown belt. And they're like, I'll do it. And I go, you will. And they come back, but it didn't work. And I was like, I'm like, well, it worked for him. He seemed to get it like 4 or 5 times. I don't understand. Same thing happens in weaponry, everything. It's like one thing is to have the technical knowledge and information, but we also have to have an environment, like we mentioned earlier, to place it under stress and do it actively against someone in a safe way. So the technique is great, but the one thing that makes Filipino Kali and the multiple systems of Filipino Kali so unique is they give you training environments to do that. It's like rolling, but you have the environment with a knife, with a stick. Then one is drills, but actually having a smart process to get a blade and let's knife fight for 30 minutes. Let's work on angles, timing. Let's study the arc of weaponry and know, just seconds off and you miss a split second ahead and you get them. It's not so much technique, but it is the application. And that application of technique has to be from wisdom based that is gained from an environment like rolling. Kickboxing. You get out and kickbox. You learn jab and cross, but actually going across the room and putting it on somebody's foreheads can be a challenge unless you've done it. And those little intricate changes of timing and space all come from those environments. So I think that's the difference. It could easily be fixed. The techniques are great. It's just they maybe don't have that type of environment for them where other systems would. And that's the case for all systems. You look at marksmanship. That's one thing to learn the technique, and it's the other thing to go to the range every 2 weeks and actually do it. Yeah. So you can apply that information or that educational process to anything.
How do you have time for it all? That's where the coffee comes in, right?
I opened a school. In between mopping the mat and taking out the trash, I get to do a little bit.
Cool.
I have to have themes for my days. Like Tuesday, Thursday may be a grappling day. And then, first half of the day may be working on grappling, and the other half of the day may be more of a ground fighting where I'm trying to avoid it. I've got a grappler coming after me. I've got a blade, and maybe there's two of them now. He's got a buddy. So now I can't get pinned. I have to fight my way out of it. I'm stuck between two cars or between a car and a wall. It's still a ground fighting environment because I'm not on my feet, but those 2 days might be specifically for those. Tuesday afternoon is David, one of the instructors here at the school, and Coach Stephen. We all get together and we run with scissors and play with knives. So we'll knife fight, we'll stick fight. That we realize that we have to have time in that environment to actually be good at it. It's super simple, angle one, angle two, but actually making it work against a resisting opponent, those things are difficult. So we usually get about an hour, maybe an hour and a half in on Tuesdays. You'll have days where it's pummeling, anti-pummeling, takedown, anti-takedown. You'll mix elements of striking in there. And then projectile, which we don't really do at the school, but we do a lot of close quarter manipulation of the firearm. They're fake guns. And just that social range where that type of thing happens and they decide not to run, they're just going to come get you dealing with that. And so we'll have a day where we're doing that. So we kind of have to split it up a little bit and just log time. I tell my guys, how many hours of this did you get this month? How many hours of that? You want to get better, add 30 minutes next month. Put an extra hour in of that next month. See if your training partner come in on Thursday night and meet you an hour earlier and do those drills and just roll. because that's what it is. You know, that's what gets you there. All the stuff people don't believe you're doing, go do that.
Since you've been talking about all the weapons, which day is like Viking Day where the morning stars and the shields come out?
Oh man, I need that in my life. That sounds really cool.
I'll sign up for that one. I'll grow the beard and I'll join in.
Well, David, one of the instructors here, he actually has a set he got last year. They're hatchet type. He's brought those in a few times. I haven't got to play with them. They look very intimidating.
Honestly, the whole way through this conversation, when you started talking about the different weapons, and you reeled off, projectile, sharp edge, blunt, and I was thinking, I just had all of these like horrible images of like different, different contraptions going through my mind, and I'm thinking, imagine being at that class when they all get thrown on the floor. It'd just be carnage.
Oh yeah, and it's brings you back to reality. Back into that state of I don't know nothing. Oh man,
yeah,
gotta love it.
I know nothing, so I'm working on my 200-meter sprint time. How fast can I get away? Can he run as fast as me, carrying something he wants to stab me with?
Hey,
yeah.
What did we say was the good tactical running distance? We've had this
Here's a really
we said, Adam, obviously, if you've got, like, someone says, oh, I'll run a marathon. Well, if someone's still chasing you for that long, then good on them. But, like, how long is someone legitimately going to chase you? You're going to have to outrun them. How much faster do I need to be than someone for over how long a distance? And we often, bat this one back and forth. What's the general consensus?
I'm putting my bets on about, worst case scenario, 300 to 400 yards. You've got to be quick. You've got to be quick over 3 to 4. You've got to be fit. You've got to be fit enough to pace 300 to 400 yards. And if you can do that, you probably get away from most people.
So it depends on what you stole. Is it like a donut? Is it a cup of coffee? If it was my last cup, I'm not going to stop running.
Yeah, we didn't factor that.
So we've been locked down for an entire year now, Alan. One of my random questions that I wanted to ask you: if you had to give up something for a year, if it was jiu-jitsu or coffee, which one would it be?
Oh, wow. It's probably going to take a year to decide.
Just let me make another coffee while I think about that one.
That's because they both go together. I mean, I'll have a cup on the edge of the mat in between rounds. Keeps me going.
Yeah.
You also do I noticed on social media, you used to do the scuba diving as well.
Oh yeah. I got instructorship, I think it was in 98. And, I took a little time off in the last 10 years. But probably in the last 2, I've got more active in it again, working as a dive master, doing more instruction. So that's been great. Can't complain.
I think if ever I lived in America, I'd need to live near you, because the combination of diving, coffee, and jiu-jitsu, I couldn't really place myself anywhere else.
All right, let's go.
We're moving. We kept on looking. We've been looking. It's crazy. What rabbit holes lockdown, if you're in lockdown this long, take you down. And we started looking up, especially Bill and I, started looking up ghost towns that we could buy. And start a jiu-jitsu commune. So even if we were locked down, we could still keep going. We just put the fence up.
Sounds like a good investment.
Yeah. So you've got that, and then kind of you kind of said that everything kind of molds together and you train everything together to some extent. Is that where the tactical side of stuff came from? That molding of everything together, and how does that work? Is that because I thought I saw, correct me if I'm wrong, that you kind of do it as some courses as well for people getting into close protection and that kind of stuff?
Yes, probably about 13 years ago, I had a friend introduce me to the Executive Protection Institute out of Virginia. And they had been having a lot of defensive tactics instructor come in, leave, come in, leave. They go through them. You know, they'll learn the material. It's pretty impressive at first. And then 6 months later, they realize I can't do this legally. I can't do it with a suit and tie on. And I have a client that I'm supposed to be protecting, so I can't get engaged. So when they asked me to come in, I went through the school and I had an opportunity to do some of the work and design the program, which is protection response tactics, around their environment. So we build it specifically for what they do. And that's what got me introduced to EPI. I've been with them for about 13 years now. Usually teach for them about every 6 months. And that led into doing work for Vehicle Dynamics Institute out of New Jersey, which is a driving school here in the US. We do all their DTs for them, and went on from there to law enforcement, different military groups, doing the same thing, which is we design programs to fit their environments instead of just coming in and saying, here, do jujitsu or do Thai boxing. That's how we got introduced to it. And once we designed the programs, you know, we had them still. And that's what really started AMAC Tactical Group, is because other people would say, we want you to come in and teach that program to our officers, or it's a military group. And it's just grown from there. This last year actually was surprisingly busy, a lot going on. So the industry is looking for a lot newer answers that fit, you know, the force continuum. They have to follow local laws. It has to look socially correct and visually correct, because, you know, you're going to be on video. So that's what brought that whole business up on the tactical side.
You had to change much of your programs based on the fact that, you know, you'll be on video, you know, using those techniques, or were they always, you know, designed in such a way that it would be acceptable to be on video?
Yeah, the PRT was like that. You know, you could be working as a protection agent, have to deal with a threat and be completely legally in the right to deal with it. But because it was on video, you embarrass the client and you're fired. So all of it has to be visually correct. It also has to be based on a force continuum. You're constantly trying to stay on the lower levels. But if you have to ramp it up, it has to be visually appropriate. When we teach it at EPI, we always tell the guys in a room that they're the paparazzi. So if at any time I do a move that you think will get me fired, you just yell click and we'll stop and take a look at it and see, you know, if that image, and I tell them too, you can get your phones out and take photos, see if you can catch one that looks inappropriate. And which is what they have to deal with every day when they're doing their job. So that whole system is based like that. And a lot, you know, a lot of the stuff we do with the CTAC, which is the Civilian Tactical Program, it's just more for civilians. They have to follow different rules. Same thing. It has to be socially acceptable and visually appropriate. So that whole program, that whole curriculum is set up the same way.
How does that shift? Like, what's the shift? So you're saying that the CTAC is for the civilian stuff. What's the difference? Is it sort of that they're not doing it as a career? It's just a more of a self-defense thing, or is that just what's the kind of the cutoff?
Yeah, it's you know, it's set up just like any martial art. You know, you can have a class or two a week in it. There's a progression system. There's lots of tactical flavored systems out there from different parts. And for me, when I started looking at them, they have great marketing. But when it got down to it, it's just not good stuff. It's terrible. So it's one of the motivators for putting the program together is, we wanted to answer that question for someone who has to worry about the legalities of putting your hands on somebody. Just getting into a stance and putting your fist up, you're already in trouble. So it's looked at very differently. The whole system has to be taught that way. So it's something that can be studied over time, and it goes into blunt and edge weaponry. It's just not the type of things we would look at in Kali. It's things you'd find, on your desk or at a restaurant, things that are in your car every day, and how to recognize them as a tool and use them. So, and one thing that system does that I don't see in a lot of the other ones is the social exchange prior to an engagement. A lot of people will freeze verbally. Some people won't. They have the gift of gab, so they can use it. And we study it so that the individuals that aren't comfortable speaking in a stressful situation, something that's socially stressful, they learn to gradually get good at it. And they'll have tools, just like anybody physically. They have things they can say at certain times to try to de-escalate or deal with a verbal exchange. What position can you be in that's appropriate and you're also ready? You have to be aware of threats going for the belt line and what that means. The things you look for are a little different than what you would do in a normal martial arts class. And then they follow a force continuum as well, because even though it's not required by law, when you have to articulate what you've done to a law enforcement officer, being able to explain that you tried several of this lower level of force ideas first, and you had no choice because the threat forced you up the scale, that's a much better place to come from.
That sounds something that's be really useful for all of your students to have that understanding, right? The understanding of what they can and can't do, and how that works. I mean, we jokingly talk about it, I guess, without even realizing, don't we? We always say about, with Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, about this rather than this, because this is a fight and this is a negotiation, and then I do always joke, look, this looks good on CCTV.
That's true. It's a universal place to be, that I don't want any trouble. And your hands are up. Especially as they start to bridge that critical distance, they start to get in range. It's very difficult to deal with.
The chaotic bit, right?
Yeah.
What's the difference? I'll probably butcher what ours is in a minute, but what's the difference in terms of like escalation of force? So if someone in the States, in terms of legality about how you're allowed to escalate the force that you use in self-defense, how does that kind of work over there?
In my experience, it's varied by location or state. Right. Like even for the law enforcement officers, you may work with a group that has one continuum and then go work with another group next week, and they have a completely different set of rules. For me, the base three, well, you have a verbal exchange, and we look at that as the first level of force. And you want to be able to negotiate or, deal with the predatorial advancement, verbal advancement. People will challenge you verbally to see how you'll react. They'll test you. And because I think most of the time they're looking for an easy meal. So if your reaction is, kind of cowering, or they're like, I've got this guy. So the next level would be they initiate touch. So they've walked into you. They've made an effort to bridge the gap. And it's a soft level of control. How can I control them and move them? It's not socially elevated to a fight yet. They're just starting to test you physically. So you have to be able to negotiate that intelligently, because if you ramp it up at that point, you're in trouble. And the better you are at it, the more effort it takes the threat to elevate the situation. They have to try harder to push it up the scale, which is good. It's visually very good too. The next one, I always nicknamed it hidden force. I've got to give them a little bit of attention, but I can't do it in a way that's, you know, going to be caught on camera or get me in trouble later. So how do I answer that? Past that is more of an assault level. It's on. And, but I still have to take into consideration, you know, how I'm going to, unfortunately, especially trained, how it's going to look. And then past that would be like a lethal force idea, regardless of the tool. And the baseline that I've always followed is like jeopardy, opportunity, and ability. They have to possess all three, which is, you know, there's more advanced philosophy around that, but that was pretty simple to remember for the guys and calculate in a stressful situation.
Nice. No, that's good. That, I mean, that sounds like that fits with our system as well. Anyway, that's like, seems pretty universal in that, yeah, we're allowed to, if once physical forces start, you know, they attempt physical force, then you can escalate by one stage, as far as I understand at the moment. So if they, you know, if they try and, I don't know, hit you with a stick, you can hit them with a chair, or, you know, I don't know, it's like one. If they come at you with a knife, yeah, exactly, chair defense. You could, if they come at you with a knife, you can kind of, yeah, anything you can use to, you know, solve that problem. And when we come,
we don't get the guns though.
Yeah, I was going to say we don't get to escalate to firearms, so you've got to find, I don't know, a bigger knife or something.
Like Crocodile Dundee.
Yeah.
Well, at that, you know, the distance that those type of exchanges happen, to me, in my experience, when I'm playing with the guys, I'm quicker with a blade than the gun.
That was the video with Dan, wasn't there? The 21 feet rule.
Yeah, you know, like they if they go for a firearm, the way I wear a knife set up, I can have it out and bridge the gap very quickly. So, you know, it's not a bad thing. Outside of that long range, you know, yeah, that's trouble.
Yeah. So, how would you? This is something I kind of keep meaning to ask everyone. I keep forgetting when I get the chance in front of them. How would you describe Gracie Jiu-Jitsu to someone that has no idea what Gracie Jiu-Jitsu is?
How would I explain it? Join us in class. I want you to go over there and try to take that guy's lunch money from him. And you come back and tell me what happened.
For you.
Nothing like a firsthand experience. You know, earlier I mentioned operating in the different primal environments, and, you know, getting off your feet and onto your ass is one of the environments. You can't avoid it. A lot of people will say, well, I just won't, but, you know, gravity's not just a good idea, it's the law. And you're going to end up down there, whether you slip, fall, get knocked unconscious, the guy's good enough to take you down. So you have to be prepared to be put in that position. I'd like to train to avoid it, but I'm going to prepare for it if it happens. And so this is what part of that environment looks like. And, you know, you can look at untrained individuals. There's a lot of videos on YouTube that of people who've gotten in a fight, gone to the ground, and you watch them, and they end up in these positions without training. So they're primal positions. So having an answer for that is very important. You know, I've worked with a lot of law enforcement officers. They were untrained, and they were coming for training because one of them had pulled a kid over, and the guy got out of the car, and what he did was jump guard on him, drug him to the ground. And the guy didn't know what happened. When he explains it, he came to, or he woke up, and I'm sure he didn't go unconscious, but just the shock, he came out of it. He had this kid's legs around him, and all he could think was hold his gun. And the kid was just wailing on him. So he didn't have an answer, and you have to have an answer for those baseline situations you'll end up in. And I like what you learn them, you can start to train a little bit to be ahead of time. I don't want to end up underside or in guard. I'd like to avoid it and end up in a situation where I'm going to be able to throw strikes or bladed striking and get up and keep moving. Because I don't know, in my experience growing up, there was always more than one person that you ended up fighting. He's got a buddy or the Good Samaritan. You're not going to fight him, but you've got to deal with him. He's trying to break it up, and you got the guy punching you in the face, or the girlfriend, she's hitting you, he's hitting you, and you can't do anything other than just take it, but you're having to deal with him at the same time. There was always more than one. So you have to calculate that in, take it into consideration. So that's usually how I'll explain it. And they'll at least see the need for it.
Yeah, Pete, we heard a story about law enforcement here. It's someone we didn't know, but it was kind of we heard via a third party. And the guy, the police officer, had basically been knocked to the floor. The guy had mounted on top of him, and he was just pushing his eyes in. He was choking him. He wasn't.
Yeah, choking him.
He was choking. And his eyes went funny because of the choke. That was it. That was the story, wasn't it? And he came around, didn't have a clue. And like the guy that was telling us about the post-traumatic stress basically this guy was getting after this perp had basically just sat on him and tried to choke him. And like you say, a simple, very sort of basic trap and roll would have probably solved most of the problem. It would have at least taken one of the hands off the neck.
Yep.
So that was kind of where the conversation went with this guy, wasn't it, Pete? He was just saying just a small bit of knowledge there would have really helped the guy.
Yeah. And it was interesting as well, the conversations we've had about it subsequently about, and you'll have come across this more than us, about how do you feel about those law enforcement guys teaching that stuff without giving them that, oh my God, I know nothing. And then they've got to go to work the next day and perform, suddenly feeling like they don't know anything. Who is it that was talking to us?
That was Randy.
Oh, that was Randy that was saying that. Yeah. About trying to coach law enforcement guys or whatever in a way that means that they don't feel completely
it was almost like a shield of kind of ignorance in a way, wasn't it? In the nicest way possible. And as soon as they lose that kind of that protection of that shield, then they're actually maybe at more risk until they know a lot more,
Yeah, I mean, I think the industry is starting to realize that they need a little more of that information.
Yeah.
And that's been my experience in the last year. We've had more contact us looking for something for the guys. It's just a long process because of all the legal channels that you have to go through, what you can teach them. And, it has to be cleared by an attorney and accepted by the state. And then, it has to go through post before it's something you can officially use. So I think the industry is starting to move through that process now and trying to get more intelligent information in. And it's up to the individual officers too, to take the time to at least run through the basic techniques and be aware of it. As a baseline, it would be good to, go to a local academy and start to get some experience playing with it as well. I think a lot of times they avoid it just because, it can be intimidating going into a martial arts school, especially some jiu-jitsu classes, you will get tied in knots, so if the guys, they're out there listening to this, don't give up. Not all of those schools are the same. Find one that will work with you and, keep the volume knob down until you're comfortable. And so that you can, gain that knowledge. It'll save your life, save someone else's life. It's it's invaluable information. That's one of the cool things about what Coach Randy's been doing with his program is he actively gets out and talks to different departments, and he's really putting a lot of effort in making a difference, which is cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably the same over here. You find it pretty impenetrable to be able to get through to any of the and we're forces, and we've got it easier in a way in that it's one force, right? We don't have to deal with states or anything like that. We've got one police force for the entire country, and it's you know, a bit more solid that way, but it's still pretty impenetrable to get through to anything, isn't it? And they're not allowed to, you know, talk like you were saying.
They're not allowed to raise their voice too much.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So
you're stern telling off.
Yeah, the officers that do it, they do it completely off their own back, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, we've got several students at school and that, you know, that are law enforcement officers locally, and they've just taken it upon themselves to come in, and, you know, which is great. You know, I've been trying to do more like Randy lately to make it more available, help those guys out. We're doing 4 events this year for local law enforcement. It's just free. It's started out just me teaching all day, but now, you know, we've got a couple of one of the guys here at the school, Dennis, he's a firearms instructor, and he's got some really awesome programs. He's going to come in and teach. Chris Benfield, he's a local law enforcement officer. He's coming in, and he's been working on a new arrest program. So we're going to have different guys teaching throughout the day, and it should be good. Should help them out.
Nice.
So linking it back to the lockdown, Alan, at the moment in the UK, they're going mad trying to vaccinate everybody. They order it, you know, based on the most needy, you know, so who gets the vaccine first? So old people, people with health conditions, etc. Jiu-jitsu, everybody can benefit from jiu-jitsu. Who would you put at the top of the list for needing that jiu-jitsu medicine or those skills that come from jiu-jitsu?
Wow. You know,
would you say it's the law enforcement officers, or is it, you know, the young girls going off to college? You know, who would you say benefits most from getting that exposure?
You know, if I had to pick a group, maybe law enforcement. I think, you know, I think everybody should study some sort of combative art. One, just to be able to deal with any type of situation that comes up, and 2, because of you know, the advancements personally, personal growth and development that comes out of it, you know. But yeah, you know, law enforcement officers have been dealing with a lot in the last year, so that group, I guess, would be one of the ones on the top of the list.
I think it's a sin that they're allowed to go out without it. Really, it's not fair.
Yeah, you know, when I talk to them, you know, how often do you even take your gun out of your holster? And, you know, some of them would be like, well, I've been doing this for years and I never have. And then you'll say, how often do you put your hands on people? Every day. Walk up, you need to move, you need to come over here. And it's like, it looks like you'd study putting your hands on people as well as, you know, all of your other options. And just, I guess they're working on it. You know, they're starting to see the need for it. So
good.
Yeah, no, it's good to hear. Again, yeah, we haven't had quite the controversy at this side with that, you know, with the police force stuff, but it's definitely filtered over, and they definitely need the help. You only have to watch a couple of TV shows and see that it's taken 8 of them to take down, you know, one guy. And it was a few years ago now, but they were trying to arrest someone, and it pretty much landed on my driveway. And there was like 8 of them trying to arrest one guy at like 4 a.m. And I did stop short of putting my head out the window and going, like, do you need some help? Because they're just more of them. I couldn't actually see how many people they were trying to arrest, because all I could see was a mounting pile of police officers that was getting higher and higher and higher. And I couldn't tell who was at the bottom of it. I had no idea. So I was like, they'll be all right. They're fine.
Go out there in your slippers and your cup of coffee and handle the whole thing for them.
It would have helped him get back to sleep a bit quicker.
Get back to sleep quicker. Yeah, exactly. Oh man.
I guess in answer to Bill's question for myself, like I think actually sometimes the people that need it the most are actually the bad guys, or the bad guys that aren't that bad. You know, not the evil ones, but just the ones that are a little bit trigger happy. Like Adam was saying earlier, I guess the more you do, the more it takes to wind you up and to set you off, and hopefully that's calms some people down as well.
Yeah, I think that's correct. If you are aware of what you can do and you're confident in it, those lower levels of force, you're comfortable using your hands, and I can go over there and put this guy on his butt if I need to. That you're not as quick to go to higher levels of force,
and less to prove as well, I guess.
Yeah.
But the dissolving of the ego just stops you from feeling like you have to go and say something.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, I wonder how many people the same story as you were saying, Alan, just being super energetic kids, and martial arts being something that kind of gives them a bit of focus and a way of getting rid of that energy. No, that must have saved, because I think a lot of the kids that I've seen that start to go through sort of like a continuum of getting in more and more trouble actually do start off as kind of those super energetic kids, and they just never find a channel for it. And then it's like, well, how can I, what am I going to do now?
Just as a little sidebar, Pete, you might want to explain what your previous job was.
I was a teacher. I used to teach 16, 17-year-olds, not a terrible town, but yeah, it had its problems, had its socio-economic problems and things like that. So yeah, I saw them at 16, 17, 18, when they were everything from either super nice kids, awesome, to be around, really fun, really engaged in their education, or, in and out of prison and everything else. So yeah. And it was the kids that were kind of, it was family background and everything like that. But also, yeah, they tended to be the kids that were a little bit like ADHD or a little bit like super energetic, and they, desperately needed that something that lit the spark that focused them a little bit.
Yeah. We've had several of those kids over the years come into the academy, and they're dealing with it with drugs, and they will get into the academy and find a physical outlet that they can do 2 or 3 days a week, and we'll just wear them out. And that calms them down. They have a place to express it, get it out physically, and then they're okay. I've seen a lot of that, actually.
I guess it's that idea of exercising the chimp or exercising the monkey, isn't it? I don't know if you've seen that book, The Chimp Paradox. The Chimp Paradox, Pete?
Yeah.
And basically in there, she says like people have this like monkey that's shaking the cage inside, and just doing something physical actually kind of takes him out of his cage, walks him around the block a few times, puts him back in, and you have better control over him afterwards. It's quite a good analogy. It's quite a good book actually. But
what's it called?
The Chimp Paradox.
All right.
I don't think it's the most sort of medically correct in some of the things they kind of say from a physiological point of view, but from an analogy point of view, it's pretty good.
That's cool. I agree with that. I mean, that's the same thing that for me helped me channel it into something that was not illegal. I'm going to go to class and punch this guy in the face. So that's great.
Exactly. Yeah. It's it's not even simulated violence. It's legalized
violence.
And the other guy's trying to do the same thing on my face. So it's just,
sanctioned. It's all fine. Well, we've taken up loads of your time there, and thanks so much for just coming on and being a guest on the podcast. Is there anything like promote, or if people want to get a hold of you and come train, or how would they find you?
Well, the website for the Academy in Atlanta is atlantamartialartscenter.com. My personal website is sifualanbaker.com. And most of my contact information is on both sites. Feel free to reach out anytime if you're in the area. I always tell the guys this, especially we're part of a lot of organizations. Consider it a second home. We're fortunate to have guys visit all the time, and it's great. Some people are hesitant about it. You don't have to be with AMAC. We have it all the time and love it. I look at it as a big family. And the bigger the family, the better. That's what's great about this. It's meet more of the extended family and grow, build the network, and keep in touch. There's a power to it, and there's nothing else like it. So
that's awesome. And it's definitely, I mean, we've said it on every podcast, but it's definitely not a platitude that, it'd be great anytime you want to come over to the UK once we're allowed to do anything.
Once we can let anyone in.
Yeah, once we're allowed to let anyone in, then, that's been the great thing. Everyone on the podcast, we're dying to be able to actually come and see in person or have them over, or so. Yeah, anytime you're, free for a trip to the UK, you'd be very welcome. That'd be awesome.
Awesome. We'll do it in person.
Yeah, that'd be great. So, guys, I'm going to cut the stream off here in a second for everyone listening or watching. If you haven't already, and if you've made it this far, can you hit the subscribe button? If you've made it this far, hit the subscribe button on YouTube. Leave a comment on iTunes or Spotify or anything else like that you're listening to. Give it a rating. That would help us out loads. And hopefully you're enjoying them. So, yeah, tell all your friends, share the links, etc. That would be great. So we're back next week, and we'll catch you with Haldor, I believe. Yep. And everyone that's listening, we will catch you on the next one. Thanks, guys.